Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. It's not really a New Year for us because it's the end of December and Christmas is in the next couple of days. But I'm pretending it's the New Year so that way I can welcome you all to 2025 and also to Season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Revamped. Did I sound like a person on the air?
A radio host.
Yeah, the radio host. I'm a radio host. Anyways. Courtney, I've been waiting for this since you said yes to the podcast, just to throw that out there now, because season 2 is ultimately the one season I truly couldn't live without. It's the first season I really remember watching, and I also was just very obsessed with as a kid and young adult. This was always the season I would like burn I'm sure the DVDs that I have scratches all over them and don't work because, all the things. But I fell in love with it, as I'm sure we all did, those who have already viewed it. If you know, you know. But from the stories, the impact this season has on our characters and myself, it was just always intense. They all have a special place in my heart as far as the show goes, but season 2 holds the biggest portion of it. And this is where the show gets consistently great, and each story and moment just builds on itself, setting us up for things across the series. Because obviously in season 1, we had a lot of Monster of the Week episodes. We had every 4 episodes kind of building the overall arc. More of it was trying to have to learn these characters, learn these situations that they're getting themselves into and how Buffy's going to help deal with them. Sadly, I can't say too much right now, obviously. But it's going to be fun coming back to this statement about the season's conclusion, and more than anything, I'm stoked as shit to witness your reaction to it, because this shit is just the way I described it a minute ago, intense.
Yeah, I can tell already. Just from this episode, I can already tell. Intense beginnings.
We are so pleased to be back for season 2. And as I just professed, this is going to be a great season for us, especially. We're going to have some cool guests joining us this season and some new things that we will get into as we go along with it. But overall, right now, how do you feel moving into season 2?
I am super excited, and I don't know, more than anything, I'm just ready to see where things go, all the twists and turns, and really I'm looking forward to more character development, to be honest with you, because I feel like everyone says season 1 is really campy, quote unquote, and so I feel like the characters are just hitting this kind of peak where we're like getting to know them, but there's still so much room for them to evolve to other places. And now we're also seeing a totally different side of Buffy that we haven't yet. So, yeah, it's an interesting start to season 2. I'm looking forward to it.
Season 2, Episode 1, When She Was Bad. Written and directed by Joss Whedon. And I thought it was cool because back-to-back episodes by Joss. He also did Prophecy Girl. He's like, I have to continuate this story. No one else can have it but me.
He has to finish it and start it.
In this episode, Buffy returns to Sunnydale after a summer away to find a group of vampires led by the Anointed One is going to attempt to resurrect the Master. Meanwhile, the trauma she endured last season causes her to lash out and strain her friendships, but when her friends become endangered, she must pull it together to thwart the looming danger and reclaim her strength as the Slayer. It's the Slayer. Not for real. As for most Buffy episodes, I really enjoyed this one. We're back and our girl is back, and we get some great moments all across it. The whole perspective of what can happen to a person's mind after they experience something quite gravely traumatic is just once again, the word intense comes to mind, but this is easily my favorite Buffy season opener amongst the 7. And minor spoiler, I find it okay to give in this moment. This kicks off the running tradition for every season opener starting in a graveyard. So every episode's
Mm.
opener, we will always have a graveyard scene. It's
Oh, nice.
it's classic, it's duh, it makes sense. And I feel like that's not me like telling you, Buffy dies again in 3 episodes. And she doesn't, but Buffy never dies again. Biggest spoiler ever. Um, but not only that, it kicks season 2 off in a huge way. I want to save most of my thoughts for my closing statements and, as usual, discuss in detail along the episode's recap. But Courtney, you and I viewed this late night after our recording session with Steph and Cara for Prophecy Girl, and we had a good time. We didn't get into it then, but here's the floor for you. Share your thoughts of when she was bad.
It was a new take on Buffy that I wasn't expecting. It makes sense, and I appreciate the insight and the look into, like you said, someone's mind when they have had a traumatic experience. You can definitely tell in this episode that there's some PTSD vibes happening. And it was just really interesting to almost see this. I don't want to give away too much. I want to save it for when we're talking about it. But it was really interesting to see the parts of the dynamic shift between a character like Cordy and a character like Buffy, because they've always been so vastly different. So to see them so closely paralleled, and for Cordelia to even be put in a position to confront the situation, kind of was like, oh shit, this is, like you keep saying, it's intense. It's a really intense just episode, and it's an intense look into Buffy and this other side of her. And I'm really more curious because you said she's not going to be mean this whole season, but I'm curious to see how much of the side throughout the entire series happens, or like how much of that we get to see, or if it happens again. So I think it just kind of left me curious about Buffy more than anything. Now she's the onion.
I didn't think about it, but with you saying that, I want to award the show's writers for dealing with something and not brushing it over and sweeping it under the rug, so to speak, for the trauma that someone can experience. Obviously, we get it in the episode, like with Marcy and like all of her trauma. From that happening as a big point in that, we get to transition, because honestly, I'll say this as like a minor spoiler, there's other times in the series where they kind of fall short with stuff like that. It's almost like it's swept under the rug, or people just don't bat an eye at it, and we get the brush off for somebody's healing journey and process.
Hmm.
And we'll witness that as we come along and obviously comment on it then. But this episode did a good job actually working with Buffy and how, the inner turmoil that was happening with her, because this was the steps forward. Because obviously by the end of the episode, she's in a better mindset with it. She does some stuff that helps, I wouldn't say cure her PTSD, because I don't know
No,
if
but
there's an
she gets
overall cure
some of
for it.
those suppressed emotions out.
Yeah,
She finds an outlet basically in the episode. But yeah, it was like you said, it's commendable for the writers to throw that in there. To me, it was really obvious based on how vastly different her character arrived in the episode from what we're used to seeing her as. So I appreciated seeing it. I think that they could have so easily taken the other turn. You know what I mean? In most cases, these shows would have the woman come back and be like the most badass, confident, ready to take over the world version of herself, with the element of her organic personality that we're used to still intact, where we see Buffy almost as a stranger, kind of initially, where we're like, what the
yeah.
fuck's going on? And it takes a second, unless you're obviously, if you're a viewer, right away like what the trauma is, but you really start getting an insight how like heavily impacted by this whole experience she really was, and how it's not just like normal because she's a slayer and she does this all the time. Like, it definitely took a toll on her because of the gravity of the situation. So it humanizes her in a way. In spite of being
Yeah.
a slayer, it becomes a regular girl who had a traumatic experience, is the way I saw it, and I really like that. So it was good.
I put a little note in here that we both love the number 13 so much, and this is technically the 13th episode of Buffy
Oh,
in the series,
yeah.
so a little celebration for our 13th episode. This will only
Yeah.
happen the one time, so
True.
except for every season getting to episode 13 of the season. This
Yes,
is the
now
one.
that
This
there
is the
are
one.
13.
Yes.
Or more than 12, I should say.
I also want to add before we get started that David Boreanaz, who plays Angel, has been added as a main cast member in the show's opening credits now. So he is not just a special guest star as he was in season one. He's an actual like hardcore paid actor now in this show.
He's official.
He's a fish, not like a fish. Go fish. And also, Christoph Beck debuts in this episode, replacing Walter Murphy, who was the soundtrack composer for the previous season, all like the fight scene music and like all the elemental stuff that happens there. This is the new person, and he's without a doubt my favorite Buffy music maker. He pretty much composes the music all the way up to like I think the end of season 5 for the most part, or somewhere along that journey. But he's got some brilliant compositions and musical themes that he does, not only for the characters, like when you get those love themes for like love characters, like people get them. I don't know how to put that without giving spoilers, so that's that. But yeah, keep an ear open for the beautifully done music along the season too, because it's all just I listen to it. I'll just be listening to Buffy like
I really
fucking
like that.
music.
That's a good idea.
All right, great. Here we go. Last season on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Giles informs Buffy and welcome to the Hellmouth. She is the Slayer, the one girl in all the world, the chosen one. The gang all learn who Angel is, the vampire that's fallen in love with the Slayer. The Anointed is presented to the Master as the one who will lead the Slayer to him, whom she will face and will die. To which she does, and after being bitten and drowned by the Master, he breaks free of his prison and opens the Hellmouth. Moments after her death, Angel and Xander find her, and Xander brings her back to life with CPR. And the Master is stunned when Buffy shows back up to take his ass out, because she may be dead, but at least she's still pretty. We learn the Hellmouth is just below the library and demons rise from it, but Buffy and the Master fully face off. She gets the upper hand and sends him falling through the school's sunroof right onto a split wooden table where he is staked as the demons are sucked back into the Hellmouth and the Master turns to dust, his bones lingering behind with Giles, Jenny, Willow, and Cordelia witnessing this event. I love this opening scene so much. It's spooky and it like rises by. The gravestone says Gray on it. So what's up, Grayson? You're dead in this episode.
Poor Grayson.
We open in a Sunnydale graveyard as Willow and Xander are walking alongside it, playing a guessing game to pass the time. Xander's having ice cream, and Willow has already scarfed hers down, no doubt, because we know Willow be loving the fuck out of that ice cream. Xander's like, if you want to hang out tonight, we can. And she's like, only if we go get Dairy Queen first. But she already ate that shit because he's still finishing his. They both grow bored with their games, saying that they could play rock, paper, scissors again, but Xander's hand's too cramped up. Willow retorting, well, yes, if you're always scissors, your tendons are bound to fuck up on you. I'm like, why would Xander always be scissors? Like, I mean, like, what?
Also, like, you're predictable.
Way too predictable. He goes on to mention that it's been the most boring summer ever. They also drop there that they haven't had any monsters around either. Xander has been so bored that he's actually looking forward to school starting up again, and Willow says,
yeah, and that wouldn't have anything to do with a certain girl we both know who is a vampire slayer.
but he states, please, he's so over her. But then they exchange brief convo about when she's getting back, informing us that she's been gone with her dad all summer in LA and didn't speak much during. This all leads to Xander being flirty with Willow, swiping his ice cream onto her nose and jokingly heading to lick it off of her face. She giggles and they share a moment as he cleans it off with his napkin, and the two almost kiss, but they don't. And as soon as they pull away, a vampire appears right in between them. He'll give them a kiss for sure, the kiss of death.
I like it.
They scream, and Xander pushes Willow out of the way, telling her to leave as he attempts to take the vamp on, but immediately failing and about to get himself bit. But in the nick of time, a hand grabs the vamp and begins to wail on him. Knocking him off his feet, Buffy spins her head around to look at her friends and says,
Hi, guys.
the vamp gets back to his feet, and Buffy sends out a leg, kicks him, slinging him into the air into a tree's broken limb, staking him, and we get our first 2K per slay of season 2, as Buffy turns back to them and asks,
Miss me?
and they appear happy, smiling back at her. When we were watching this together, you were like, you hear them owls in the background? I noticed when I was rewatching it to do the script, those owls, every time you have a scene, like when Buffy's walking up to the Master's grave later and stuff to find an empty and shit, the whoos are like hooing and that shit. And I was like, where's Courtney with her binoculars in the background? I'm like, I know she's there somewhere because she's hearing them damn things.
I'm going to give you a picture of me holding binoculars so you can literally insert it into a clip like me just chilling there in the background.
Exactly.
in the graveyard.
Anyways, after the owls hooing, what do you think of the almost interaction between Willow and Xander here? Because I know you asked me, you were like, Brandon, tell me one little spoiler. Do Willow and Xander get together? And I was like, I can't tell you that. And you were like, fuck. But like, I'm curious to know like what you thought about this moment being presented.
I don't like it. I didn't like it. It wasn't nice. I thoroughly hated it, actually. I was just like, please no, don't let this go any further. This was the one time I was glad a vampire showed up. In spite of there at the time being no sign of Buffy in distance or anything, I was just like, at this point, I don't care. I'd almost rather them get their asses handed to them by a vampire than make out with each other, because that's just not allowed. And it's for Willow's sake, really. It's all for Willow's sake. It's never
True.
about Xander for me. It's always
Not at
about
all.
Willow.
See, I was curious about that because of the fact that on the porch you were like, just curious if they got together, and I was like,
I
is
wanna
she shipping
know.
them, or is she just wanting to know because she's like, please, Willow, no, don't do this to yourself. It's gonna be
I
a
wanna know
travesty.
so I can mentally prepare if she's gonna be that stupid.
Shit. All right, great.
Because all the red flags have been there since, like, episode 3. So
Right, for real. What's that? Willow said. Where's my bracelet? She said. Well, myself, I low-key almost want to like this moment with Willow and Xander, pretending that I don't know anything about the series and I'm just right here in this episode and I don't know anything that's to come. As a viewer, I would possibly be rooting for them just because Willow's like, maybe this would be like the turn of the thing, like how Ross and Rachel end up getting together. Rachel didn't pay him no attention the first couple seasons, and then
yeah.
all of a sudden she's paying him attention. And it was all like at the end of the first season. But regardless, I find myself maybe thinking that I might have shipped the two and like thinking that maybe, Xander's gotten the point that Buffy isn't going to be into him and Para kissed ass, he realizes what's right in front of him. But on the flip side of knowing, though, of course, Xander is going to be this way. This motherfucker giving her the time of day just because Buffy isn't around.
Right.
Lich, the second she comes back in 5 seconds, he could care less immediately. Like, we'll obviously see it like later on in the episode. What is happening with
No,
this boy? Like,
same vibes, totally. And I think that was another thing for me, is that he, in spite of what he was saying, obviously he was lying about being over Buffy. And, it's one of those, like, if you have to exclaim it, you're not really over it type of situation. So clearly he's still hung up on Buffy, but yet here we are again using Willow to cushion our ego because Buffy doesn't want us. The story goes on with Xander. It's the same thing. So I'm just like, I really wish that season 2 would have turned him around in a different way, because I'm like, I'm still recovering from the pack. I need
as
more.
are we all.
I need more positive vibes flowing with Xander.
Time to call in Joyce. If you want some positive energy, I got some for you in the form of the Buffy theme. Bow, now, now, now. Yes. Yes, love that. All right, great. I'm going to look forward to your rounds every single time. I love it. See, I told you guys season 2 is going to be different. Getting back into the episode, Willow and Xander rush Buffy with hellos and hugs. Xander gives her 2, noting that her timing really doesn't suck because, that's the vampire's job. But Buffy's face when Xander hugs her the second time, she's like, bro. I thought it was cute because it's like your friend's really excited to see you. It'd be like if I hadn't seen you for a whole summer or something. Maybe not nowadays. I get to see you weekly on camera. But if I could hug you twice through the camera every time we come in, I would. But it gave good energy for me because they're just excited to see their friend. And Buffy has just arrived back in town. She comments on them being 2 losers that needed help. So she came out to find them, and she also scolds them in this process. She's like, y'all don't even have a cross on you. Like, what the fuck? Why are y'all out here walking beside a cemetery? Obviously, that sets it up for Xander to say that it's been a slow summer and inform her that that was actually the first vampire that they've seen since they killed the master. And it's like they knew that she was coming back. They talk more about her summer briefly, which was more girl versus Slayer vibes. And Xander loves Buffy's new hair, which I agree. Like, I'm going to stop and talk about this for 20 minutes, aka not really. But I agree because this is totally to die for. I love the short textured bob. She can still pin it up. It's a lighter shade of blonde. It's an 11 out of 10 for me, and that's all I'm gonna say for right now.
That's part of the fashion police.
As a hairdresser, no, that's not fashion police. Fashion police is a bad thing. Fashion watch, because fashion no-nos are whenever Cordelia's got the ascots on, or Buffy's got the glasses that you love so much, or Harmony's got that ugly green sash in her hair. Like, I'm still thinking about ripping it out.
Or Willow's dressed as a geisha.
I would rather see Willow in that outfit she wore in Welcome to the Hellmouth, the Sears outfit, than ever see her in that geisha outfit again.
You
Except
were
on my
right.
cute little drawing that I posted on Instagram for everybody to see. Anyways, Buffy asks about their summer. Willow thinks that it was fun, and Xander says that it was boring and notes that the biggest excitement was burying the master, pointing over to the graveyard zone that they laid him to rest at. Willow noting,
Right up by that tree. Giles buried the bones, and we poured holy water, and we got to wear robes.
commenting on how Buffy missed out. Buffy during this just stares off at the burial site, looking a bit stressed. Willow asking if she's seen Giles. Buffy snapping immediately. She's like, why would I want to do that? I can see him at school tomorrow. And I'm like, oh shit, that's our first little twist of her being like, something's up.
Uh-huh.
Xander exclaims once more that he's so glad she's back, and she gives us a non-convincing me too, eyeing the master's spot once more. Flashing over to Buffy's room, Joyce and Hank Summers moment. We got Joyce and Buffy's dad up in the room unpacking her bags. Did you expect to see him in the episode at all?
No.
I mean, obviously you watched it with me the first time around, but I'm just like, every time I see him come up on there, I'm like, bruh, you get like one episode per season where you get 3 minutes of screen time.
Gotta be. That's all dads get.
Around here, it's the theme. It's on theme. We'll call
It's
it
on
theme.
theme for my life. Starring David for 3 minutes out of 34 years.
Joyce is tripping out on him for buying her a shit ton of clothes and shoes and prodding to ask about how she was with him. He says it was great. Joyce sensing a but, and he's like, I'll describe her as super distant and doing her own thing, hardly there with no connection. The last time that he was around, Buffy was all gung-ho about seeing and spending time with him in nightmares, and this summer she seems to have like distanced herself from him. Joyce blaming the full access pass to his credit card as the culprit. He tells her he knew how to talk to her better when she was getting into trouble. Joyce agreeing that talking to her and connecting has also been hard for her, but she will just be happy if she can make it through the school year. A round of cutscene transition magic here, because as soon as Joyce says that she hopes that she can make it through the school year, we arrive in the next day, the sunniest first day of Sunnydale High's new school year. Cordelia is walking with her Cordette, speaking on how her summer was shit due to the fact that her parents took her to an art and history tour with no beaches. No one has suffered like she has suffered. And is it possible to have too much character? Principal Snyder and Giles are seen actively walking together, and Snideman is being his usual self, hating on the students, professing said hate on them as pointless creatures that shouldn't exist, essentially. Giles commenting that perhaps he chose the absolute wrong profession. Snyder says someone's got to do it, commenting on boys turning into gibbering fools every time a pretty girl walks by. Just as Miss Calendar appears, passing by them, saying hello to Giles, him turning into a gibbering fool. Stumbling to say hello back, smiling like a dork, but gains his footing, and they decide to head off to the faculty room together, aka a mini date. Because she's like, let's go. He's like, all right, great. And then they leave Snyder standing there alone talking to himself. And I love the end scene too. I remember laughing at it with you, where Snyder's like, I may as well be talking to myself. And Jenny and Giles have disappeared at this point. He is, in fact, literally standing there talking to the camera. This show is really great about adding these moments, and it's fully aware of itself, even though Snyder is not, you know?
Yes, that's
Shit's
clear.
funny as fuck. And I'm like, I low-key love Snyder. Like, he's a little fucking dick, but like, I like every time he's on the screen because he
I
brings.
appreciate it's a good energy to toss in because it's not too much. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's not a whole episode of him with his dialogue where we're like, please shut the fuck up and go away already, you know? But
Yes.
it's good to toss in a little bit of his rudeness. I like it.
Yum. Walking together in the halls, Giles and Jenny catch up on her summer, which included attending Burning Man, which encompassed various raves, naked mud dances, and rituals. Her stating that he would have just hated it with a fiery passion, but he's still stuck on the naked comment, and she follows it up with he probably spent all summer with his nose in a book. And then we get the first flirt this season when he guesses that that would seem dull to her, and she says, depends on the book. Jenny got to bring up Giles' books, but at least this time around, she's not snarking at him about it like she did in I Robot Eugene in every episode thereafter. She's
Yeah.
amping up them flirty vibes already hardcore, though. I was like, oh, I love this because it's helping to give us another layer of Giles, and he's not just the watcher or the librarian. He can be daddy if he wants to be per Jenny.
True.
Interrupted, Willow and Xander come down the stairs, calling out to them their hellos. Xander calling him G-Man, and Giles informing that he should never call him that fucking name again. Buffy is behind them, seeming distant. Giles asks how she is, and she confirms that she's alive and kicking, as Willow loudly blurts,
Buffy killed a vampire last night. I think you can get a little more volume if you speak from the diaphragm. Sorry.
Getting scolded by Buffy in the process, they exchange quick dialogue about how Jenny thought the Hellmouth was closed, but Giles lets them know that it's still there, attracting all the same energy. He wonders, though, if they are here for any purpose, and he must consult his books, to which Xander wins a bet he and Willow had placed. on how soon Giles would quote as such.
Oh, 8 minutes and 33 seconds pay up. I called 10 minutes before you took your books about something.
Willow's like, fuck, there goes my ice cream money.
It makes me wonder how much ice cream cost in the 90s in comparison to now, all of like
75
decades.
cents or $1 probably. 'Cause
Literally,
if you got an
though.
ice cream truck come through, or you go to like a Dairy Queen, you're probably paying at least like $6.95 or more for a Blizzard or whatever the fuck.
You probably ain't lying.
Willow at her house, you got to open up her freezer and it's literally nothing but ice cream because that's all she makes her parents buy. She's got one of them big double coolers.
She has one of the like ice chests that like open this way like a treasure trunk. You know?
She invented Ben and Jerry's. We're gonna have to get a shirt with Willow's face on it with Ben and Jerry's like logo, but say like Willow Hearts ice cream or something. Either way, Giles tells Buffy that when she's ready in her own time that they could start up her training again, her saying that she is ready. She'll see him after school. He offers her more time to settle back into life, and she claims once more that she is ready. Let's do it after school. Buffy is already disassociating and being standoffish in this scene. If you didn't get it by now, the look that she has on her face when she sees Giles, it is super awkward and hesitant. She's just looking out of the corner of her eye so that way she doesn't have to make direct eye contact with him. She's like giving off vibes when I don't want to talk to nobody. And I'm like, Giles ain't did nothing to you technically, but I guess she's putting him in the seat of some blame. It's hard to come back face to face with all the things that are reminding you of all the trauma that you went through, I guess. So this is that. But Giles is already sensing something up with Buffy too, but it's very low on his radar at this point, and he's not being overly pushy either. He's trying to give her some space, and it also got me curious if he had like any kind of contact with her over the summer, because Willow said she got a couple of postcards and then that was it. Xander didn't hear from her at all, obviously, because why would you call Xander or anything but whatever. She still has a Slayer duty. So that dynamic of Slayer Watcher begs the question for me, what would they have done if they didn't have a monster-free summer and Buffy was in LA? Would she like have to explain to her dad, hey, I need you to get me from the mall and take me to Sunnydale because, you know, I just got a beeper page from Giles and he says, you know, you told me if the apocalypse comes, beat me. So I'm trying to reach you on the pink buzzer and you're not answering. But no, for real, with me not rambling and going on a tangent. I'm like, that raises an argument for me because I'm like, what if they did see monsters? How would that have went down? Because she's all the way, you know, a 90-minute massage away in Los Angeles, because a 90-minute massage is how far LA is from Sunnydale.
That's how massage therapists time things.
I don't know. I just thought, I was like thinking about it when I was watching it this time around specifically.
No, but that is a good point because I was thinking about like, well, two things. Is it because it's the summertime? I'm like, so when school's out for summer, the vamps are just like, no, be good. It's too hot. You know what I mean?
School's out for the summer.
Yeah, like, no, everybody's out of town. We don't need to mess with that. We got to wait till the town is populated again. Or is it like because they killed the master and this whole idea of like the hellmouth and whatever is like an essence attached to the master? Like, do they think it's over? And then like Xander went on to say they had like a pretty dead summer, like they didn't slay anything or have any like they didn't have an encounter or whatever since they killed the master. So is it like, do you think that they went on to think like, oh, this is over now, or like, you know what I mean?
In the context of like why the vampires were just not thriving, I think that maybe because the fact that the master was taken out and so many people know of the Slayer now, they were like, we taking a break from everything. Obviously this vampire that's in the graveyard with Xander and Willow, he probably just rose out of a grave. Like somebody just probably sired him not long ago and he's literally rising for the night and that's his first meal. He's like, ooh, they're just chilling right out here. It's like an ice cream shop chilling on the side of the graveyard. I'm guessing maybe that's why it was just like that. And obviously the show has to set it up because when you write the story this way, it seals up potential plot holes.
No, it's still a point to ponder.
Great. And we then immediately flash to the end of the day, and our Slayer is hardcore training in the library to some aggressive punk music, flipping over railings, doing gymnastics, once again seeing her using the quarterstaffs to pummel Giles, and closing in on her body pad dummy, dishing out some targeted moves, continuing as such, till she gets aggressive with the music playing, her moves intensifying. The master's face starts to appear in her head, and Giles, witnessing this, tries to call out for her to stop as her fists are just repeatedly striking that fucking dummy. She's like, bam, 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 bam. Like I was like, girl, like take your AA batteries out because you as Energizer Bunny in it right now. Like what is happening? And then she delivers that final kick that breaks the whole fucking post in half, and that's a thick ass hunk of wood that this classic dummy is setting on. I love these displays of Slayer power, which I think I'll say again in 2 seconds, but that dummy is definitely dead. She breathes heavily, him exclaiming,
Safe to say you've stayed in shape.
her panting, fighting out the words to say it.
I'm ready. Whatever they got coming next, I'm ready.
Giles looking on a bit concerned, and here we now officially, due to the flashes, and Buffy said what kind of headspace she's in. It's just really thrown in our face that she's dealing with this fucking shit. This bothers her for some reason because the master is popping up in her head as she's attacking this thing. We know this motherfucker's dead. Like, you
Yeah.
know, there's at this point no chance of him coming back. He's out of there. He's dust. He's gone. He's ashes to ashes. But this is still affecting her in some way, shape, or form. We flash over to an abandoned factory where a male vampire named 𝒔𝒏. This is the first person of color that we've seen on the series this far in a guest role. We have not seen a black character at all in the show. Our whole cast was set up as white people, and originally Joss Whedon wanted the role of Cordelia to be a black woman, and the WB network was like, no. Like, we are not
Oh.
having, you know, not, I don't think it was like full, I mean, it is racism
No, it
at the end
probably
of the
was
day,
like,
but
no, because this was in the early 90s and, you know.
yeah, but that was originally supposed to be that way, and it didn't end up panning out. So once again, I'm glad we have a person of color in here. And the
Yeah,
fact that his
totally.
name is Absalom, I don't know if they say his name in the thing, but obviously he's written in the script and in, you know, Buffyverse wiki and all that stuff, it says what his character's name is. And I wondered if it meant anything because I was like, this name sounds very specific. And I found that the
Mhm.
name comes from the Bible and it means Father of Peace, which is not
Ooh.
accurate to the portrayal we get here because, you know, he's a vampire. But he also wears this like
Josh said it's opposite day.
lich. But he also like wears like this kind of preacher-esque outfit because he's wearing a lot of blacks and whites and very
That's
formal
true.
looking in his outfit. So I wonder if he was like a preacher or something, and now he's a vampire. I mean, as we see him right now in the scene, he comes in preaching to the Anointed One and the crowd of vampires that are in there. So I'm like, you're
Yeah.
very, very preachy for a vampire, so you're giving preacher vibes. Speaking of, he preaches about how him and his crew of vamps having had lost their way, saying that he's found something for them to put their faith into, aka Colin the Anointed One, because he points over to Colin the Anointed One sitting there with them, Absalom concluding that he will show us the way. I was like, all right, new order of Aurelius crew coming in hot. But also, real talk, how in the hell did Colin just find these people? Do they like, they sense his power status? Because obviously the master's gone and the Anointed One is supposed to be this like big energy, however you want to upstate it. And then like maybe they followed him willingly and came to him.
This is why there were no vamps over the summer because Thomas, aka Colin, had to go find the vampires first because he had to be like, hey, I'm gonna send y'all up there and try to fuck with this bitch. And it took him a whole like however long Buffy was gone, a month or two. And finally he made his way through the underground and was like, ah, here they are.
Oh my god. I want to see the conversation that he had with these guys when he met them.
I
He's
think
like,
they were like, excuse me, sir, you need to go back up there to daycare because you are so lost, or we're gonna eat you.
daycare. No, he was like, yo, homies, I'm starting up a crew. You want to roll with me? And then they all laugh at him. But no, for real, they have to be like, okay, we don't smell like humanity on you or like blood in your
That's
system or
true.
anything like that. So,
Yeah.
but I'm also wondering where he gets his meals because, you know, is he
What
just
is
a
he
little kid
eating these
attacking people?
days? Like, that's what I wanna know. Because what is he even? He's the anointed one, but
He has to
we're
have
not
blood. He's a
clear really,
vampire.
right?
He's a
Like,
vampire, so he has to have blood. But I'm
we
assuming, like,
haven't yet seen him need it.
I don't know. My assumption is that
He's
he
like,
found
"I
this.
survive solely off of telling people what to do."
As soon as he found this crew, he was like, okay, I need y'all to go out and get me some food, just like my dad taught me how to do. Like, y'all need to go out here and scavenge me at some shit. I'm used to living in a dark hole and not leaving, watching my Disney movies. So y'all need to run out and get me my Uber Eats.
He was like, "I need one of you to jump into the river of blood and come out without any blood on you, because that's routine for me. Bedtime story."
He takes them all down there because that layer is still down there. That's his initiation for everybody in his crew. He's like, you gotta jump in here, and if any lick of blood's dripping off you, you
You're
can't be
out.
in
You're
you
done.
can't be here. You don't give master vibes. I'm dead. Well, after Absalom concludes his whole the anointed one will show us the way. We jump over to another scene where we find Buffy sitting there looking solemn and broody in the school's lounge area. And this is the first time we see this little lounge area, by the way. We haven't seen it in the show at all, but we're moving a little bit further out versus the door frames and the library that we're always seeing, or, our lovely area, the courtyard, every other scene takes place in. But Buffy is greeted by Willow and Xander, who joins her to have snacks. They ask Buffy what's wrong, and she's hesitant to say, but does mention having weird dreams the night before. And I like when Willow and Xander trade their snack items. I feel like that's like the cutest thing.
I was like, do their parents still pack their lunch and like they didn't know what was in it
Yeah.
until they like looked in it and they're like, no, I don't want this.
And then Willow makes that whole comment about dreaming about Xander, and then she was like, "Oh no, it was my friend actually," and that friend
And she
doesn't
doesn't
remember.
remember it.
It wasn't Xander. In fact, it wasn't me. It was a friend's dream, and she doesn't remember it.
She was funny. But then Giles comes up saying that they've got trouble brewing. She assures him that she'll have it covered, and he grows ominous, but not for long because he attacks Buffy. She reveals he's wearing a mask, and it's actually the Master. And then we find her waking up in her bed having had a dream. That was my quickest way to get through that dream sequence because that was way too much to try to explain. But if you've watched the episode by this point, if not, go watch it so you know what I'm talking about. This is a whole ass dream sequence, and I have to bring up for you as a fun fact, that's not Mark Metcalf that played the Master in this moment and throughout the episode, I'm assuming. But it's David Boreanaz that plays Angel, and he got the vampire makeup because they have all the prosthetics, and they made him look very similar, but that's literally David Boreanaz under there doing that role and wearing that mask and stuff.
I could tell that it was just different, like it worked, it was like it was so fast and everything was happening so fast. You'd really have to be dissecting like the aesthetic that was going on.
Frame
But
by
since
frame.
I watched it twice, the second, that was one of the things I really caught and was a lot more noticeable. I was like, wait, no, that doesn't really look like the Master, but that's really interesting to know. Oh my God, I would have
Yeah.
never guessed that. That's crazy.
Speaking of like pausing frame by frame too, the Master is there in his costume, but he's not wearing that black leather. He's wearing Giles' tweed outfit. Like, it's the Master, the
So
librarian.
It's just his head. Hereditary.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I didn't write anything about Hereditary in this episode.
Well,
Sorry,
there you
guys.
go.
There you go. We mentioned it once. We've got our streak going. Season 2 Hereditary. Anyways, after waking up, she sits up in bed collecting herself. We get that nice camera angle from her open window of her doing so to let us know that her window is open. She takes some breaths, then looks over to find Angel has slipped into her room, and he says hello. He asks if she minds if he comes in. So generous. Nobody else would ever, aka Xander. She allows him for now. He asks how she is, to which she's hella short with him, stating, peachy. Then snarks, asking if he's there for a social call, being it's in the middle of the night, making it kind of late for her, insulting his vampirism, saying that it must be lunch hour for him with attitude. Offended, he says it's not social. Then she targets again to say, so let me guess, grave danger. But it's great to be home. He apologizes, wishing that there were better news. Then she snarks again to speak for him, saying,
so, some of your cousins are in town for a family barbecue, and we're all on the menu.
I was like, this bitch and her fucking banter, this smart ass motherfucker. Once again, the first thing I ever said in our first couple episodes, aka our introduction, was that Buffy's quips and her shit is the reason I'm a smart ass today. It's a shit like this.
Makes sense.
He informs her actually the anointed one has been gathering forces in town, and she isn't too worried. She can handle it herself, and she is amped up about the action. He warns her on underestimating the anointed one, and she is snappy to say,
Is that it? Is that everything? Because you woke me up from a really good dream.
She lays back down in her bed, turning her back to him. He apologizes again and says that he will leave, turning to head out her window, but he stops for a moment to say aloud,
I missed you.
We see her face take this in and just ignore him, but the emotion builds up in her and she turns quickly to the window to try to say she's missed him too. She was gonna open up to him. This interaction would have saved the whole bitch cunty vibes she was giving all episode, especially if she had caught him in time after the fact. I always feel those tender vibes because Angel still is just so infatuated with her in the best way, and you can't help but swoon over him when he tells her that he missed her. I'm just like, he was so pointed in it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm fangirling for you right now. And then he just leaves.
It's also easy because of the position he's in, because he, like, shows up and he's unfortunately, like, the messenger every time, so of course he comes bearing bad news, and that's the only time so far that we see of Angel is when he comes bearing bad news. So, of course, Buffy's, like, probably feeling that mix of emotions where, again, she's still recovering from the trauma of the Master. Now she's already had to deal with vampires, first thing being back in town. Now she's confronted with Angel, who reminds her of all of these things, but she's also, in love with him. So there's this probably like underlying excitement, like, yes, thank God he's here. But like, what the fuck are you going to say? So, of course, like her reflex is to be a bitch, especially because she's in this PTSD mode. It just makes it so easy to sympathize for Angel and feel sorry for him in that moment, even more so because then he still turns around and is so vulnerable and sweet and says, I miss you, even though she's basically like, fuck off, I'm going back to sleep.
Yeah. And he does as she wishes too, with no fuss at all. Like, he just had to let
I
her
know.
know that, and it almost breaks her. Then it kicks in with that fucking song by Alison Krauss called It Doesn't Matter. It doesn't matter what I want. It doesn't matter
I
what I
know.
need. You've made up your mind to go. I won't beg you to stay. The next morning, her mom's driving her to school as the song continues to play, and Buffy stares out the open window. Joyce tries to make small talk, but Buffy's even short with her, like she's being with everyone else so far. Joyce takes a chance to ask her if she would want to possibly share what's on her mind. Talk, clearly sensing something's bothering her daughter. Buffy just looks over at her, and Joyce says, of course not, going back to silence and staring out the window. Sorry, Joyce. Buffy isn't interested in the positive energy you're attempting to send at the moment. It's not the vibe. This moment is so real too, because that's how most kids would be. They don't want to talk to their parents, so they just like, or whatever. And the parents are usually just like, okay. And lovely for Joyce to not be an asshole of a parent and prod. Like, let your
Mm-hmm.
kid do their own thing. If your kid's got something on their mind, I mean, in her head, she's 16 years old. She's probably literally just upset her nail polish bottle broke. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sure she knows it's something not as trivial, but still, Joyce is sending those good vibes. So it was good choice, Joyce, for this.
I like it rhymed.
uh, Inside the school, when we arrive, Buffy has shared Angel stopped by her room, and Willow is gawking, asking if there was any kissing, because, she's the biggest Angel stan there is besides me. I saw it upon researching the episode that Buffy's outfit, she's in a completely different outfit in this scene. She's got a white top and some ugly ass fucking dress pants, but in the car, she was wearing the pink lace, haltery looking spaghetti
Oh
strap
my
top
God.
that she wears later in the episode. They just fucked that all up. I think they just filmed it out of order and didn't pay attention.
They were
So
like, oh, screw it.
here's
Editing.
a glitch in the Matrix for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They fucked up here, but she got that ugly ass outfit on, so that's our first fashion police moment right there. I didn't like it. The white top can stay, but the suit pants gotta go, because who is this? Buffy the businesswoman? No, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy's like, chill girl, not everything is about kissing. Xander chiming in to say, yeah, some stuff's about groping. Then Nervous catching himself to ask, there wasn't any though, right? And I'm like, oh God, here we go with Xander and his fucking I'm obsessed with Buffy shit, because of course he's still into her. But she's lightly fed up with them and says that it was all annoying shop talk. Vampires, pointy teeth, walk by night. Bells should be ringing for them. Xander mentions Chibo Motto, one of my favorite bands, is playing at the Bronze that night. Willow gets excited. Chibo Motto performing? No, Chibo Motto. They clog dance, Willow. Willow doesn't sense sarcasm immediately when it happens. Either way, they should attend. Cordelia runs into them in the hall, calling them the Three Musketeers, not knowing if she meant it insulting, saying that they were cool. Maybe she meant the Three Stooges since they're dorkier. Cordelia says that she was just trying to point out that the three of them are always together. Then No Filter asking if they fought any demons over the summer, casual talk in the middle of the school halls. Willow trips out, remembering she did the same thing the day before. Her and Xander attempt to brush it off.
Yes, our own personal demons.
Such as lust and thrift.
Buffy calls him out in that moment. She's like, I'd go with Stooges also. Cordy hasn't got the hint yet and goes on to talk about the demons and vampires that they face. Xander having to tell her, we can't just mention all that shit loud. Buffy being the Slayer and all. Willow asking, you didn't talk about our adventure all summer, did you? Her saying,
are you nuts? You think I would tell people that I spent the whole evening with you? Besides, it was also creepy, that master guy, all the screaming. I don't even like to think about it. So, your secret's safe with me.
Then Buffy insults her by calling her a moron, walking off from the three of them while they all wonder what's up with her. And this is like the first moment too when all three. I love how Cordy's here for this moment. She's like, "What's up with her?" And then Willow's like, "Something." She's like, "I'm gonna talk about it with Xander in a minute in the bronze." But here endeth Buffy's contemplation on being a total bitch, because this mention of the master truly triggers her. Every time he is brought up, honestly, she is having these moments where her attitude changes. It's like she can't escape it, but she is not dealing with it. Yet it's also boiling inside of her, getting ready to turn into this lash out bullshit she's about to start doing. Because I think this is where the camel, like, the straw camel's back broke fucking metaphor you want to put out there. This is when that shit happened, because Buffy was like, that's it. When I show up at the bronze tonight, it's full CUNT for me.
I know. Oh God.
Which is awesome, because now we arrive at this scene, and it is honestly the best fucking scene in the whole episode.
I'm not ready.
Cutting over to the bronze later that night, Chiba and Mato is performing their song Spoon, which is a fucking vibe of a song. I love the weird, quirky music vibe of the band has. But Xander and Willow are already there waiting on Buffy, and she's mentioning to him how she thinks something's up, because ever since Buffy's been back, she's been different. Him saying,
Oh, Buffy's always been different.
and her affirming.
She's never been mean.
He's hyper-focused on her arrival, though, and Willow does that little ice cream dip with her nose, and she just gets ignored the fuck out of. Xander's like, "You got something on your face," and she's like, "The fuck?" She's like, "This is not what happened 20 minutes ago at the beginning of the episode, Xander." I was like, "Sorry, Will, the moment's over. Here we go with the fuck off Xander vibes, though."
Yes, back to normal.
Yes, because this man really bothers me. I'm like, whatever. We flash for a scene over at the cemetery, arriving at the master's grave just as Colin and his new crew start to shovel and hand dig out the master's bones. I like it because the vampire's hands start sizzling, and because they poured all the holy water in the dirt, and Colin's over here like, keep digging, because they're like, "It burns the ground, it's consecrated," and he's like, "Okay, put your hands back in it." Like, the fuck? I rule you. I'm literally 7, but I'm your master now. Like, I am the master. Anyways, they retrieve the master's bones, and at this point, we should all be concerned. Back in the bronze, Chiba Mato is hitting up their second awesome song called Sugar Water. And just as they hit the beat, we see Buffy's healed foot step into the bronze, removing her jacket, looking hot as fuck in a short, deep burgundy silk dress. Guess we're over the boots and into the thick 90s heels now. This outfit is everything. Buffy's fashion moment for sure. Like, this is it. This is what seals the deal for me, because it's a 17 out of 10. I love this deep burgundy color. It looks so good on Sarah Michelle Gellar, too. Like, it's just hot. I love the black coat paired with it, too, because it's got that hood, and it's like kind of flowy, but also thin. I don't know. It's just given everything for me. This is my favorite outfit for this episode. I think I said that
It's a fashion watch.
Yes, for you. But also for me, because she's hot. But she's vibing already to the music, but not for long when Angel notices her and walks over to her. She sighs and is annoyed instantly. Looking, they exchange some highs. Him just smiling at her, she snappily asks, "So is there danger at the bronze? Should I be aware?" He asks if he's done something to make her angry, because it's been permeating in his mind, bothering him since he saw her in her room. She gaslights the fuck out of him by playing the borderline disorder game of, "Nah, that's you feeling that way, I'm just vibing." He's not dumb, though, asking,
What are you afraid of? Me? Us?
She asks him,
Could you contemplate getting over yourself for a second? There's no us. Look, Angel, I'm sorry if I was supposed to spend the summer mooning over you, but I didn't. I moved on.
walking away from him, ending the convo with
The living.
Cordelia seen witnessing this interaction. I just know I can't be alone in people watching this, even as a seasonal viewer, and having the reaction, of 1,000 times seeing it. But like, my reaction is always, ooh, shit. Like, when she walks away, she's like, "I've moved on to the living." I'm like, oh, sticking the stake in when she said she's moved on, and then twisting the stake when she says that she's moved on to the living. I was like, whew, fuck. If I was Angel, I would have turned around and walk out. But he doesn't. He stands there because he's got to be there to see this next part. Buffy walks over to Xander and Willow, acting cheery to them. Willow asking, "What's wrong with Angel?" Looking over to him to see him standing there pouting and looking all pissed off. And she fucking lies the fuck through her teeth, talking about, beats me, then looks over to Angel, then back to Xander, pushing her body close to him, her face about, 1 inch away from his face, asking him to come dance with her. He's like, the fuck am I sensing right now? Immediate hard on is what we're going to call that, Xander. He just says, okay, and agrees. They move out to the dance floor, and Buffy puts on the grandest show and most provocative dance we've ever seen. And holy fucking shit, it is hot, hot, hot. I really always used to replay this scene because I want Sarah Michelle Gellar to do this to me, still to this day. Except the bitch vibes. She teases Xander, dancing sexily with him, basically about to make him cream his pants with all the grinding she's doing on him. And let me point out, it's not how you see people grinding in the club or twerking and shit. This is done with precision and care from both Direction and Sarah. This dance is provocative, slow, sensual, and direct. You can tell that the thought that they had going into the choreography for it, like Sarah Michelle Gellar executes the fuck out of it.
Not
She's
at
doing
all.
it slow to entice.
Being a tease is what she's doing.
Which I love, because this is giving Catherine Murtoy from Cruel Intentions when she's on the chair with her brother Sebastian, and she's like, have you, sealed the deal? And he's like, no, I haven't done it yet. And she's like, well, until then, and then looks down at his like hard cock and is like, down boy, and then gets up and walks away. I was like, oh my god, this is like channeling that, which this was a
I
little bit
know.
before she filmed
Meredith
that.
even was like, I wonder if she was filming Cruel Intentions because this is really channeling that energy. Like, even Meredith said it. I was like, you are right.
I know, I love it.
Segue.
Back to the sexy dance. Willow watches on, along with Angel and Cordelia. Xander appears very uncomfortable, and just when he's at his peak of this interaction, she turns around to him, calling out his name seductively, tracing her fingers onto his lips and face, whispering,
Xander, did I ever thank you for saving my life?
No.
She dances around him, moving behind him, placing a hand on his hip to sway his body from side to side with hers, then whispers in his ear,
Don't you wish I would?
backing away from him, leaving him standing there on the dance floor, walking over to the table, ignoring Willow, retrieving her jacket, walking across the room, eyeing Angel once, and then exiting the bronze. Everyone's face just reading, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
You just pissed off Angel, you just pissed off Willow, and you just pissed off Xander. You made everybody uncomfortable in this room, and you knew what you were doing when you were doing it.
And it was so obviously intentional.
She cut everybody's throat.
She was giving everyone a metaphorical 2K per sleigh.
We'll talk about it in a second, though, because I'm going to jump into this part. Outside, we're watching her exit, and Cordelia's hot on her tracks, calling out her name. Buffy stops, and Cordy asks, "You're really campaigning for Bitch of the Year, aren't you?" Turning around to her, eye rolling, smarting back as defending champion. You nervous? Cordelia kind of laughs, then goes on to tell her that she's going to do her a favor, even though they're not close, considering that she doesn't like her that much, but has saved the world and stuff, so she feels like she owes her some advice. Get the fuck over it.
Excuse me? Whatever's causing the Joan Collins-tude, deal with it. Embrace the pain, spank your inner, mop it, whatever. But get over it. Because pretty soon you're not going to even have the loser friends you've got now.
Buffy does not like this and tells her to mind her own business and turns to leave the situation. Cordelia yelling out a good night, and maybe she'll just have to catch some dances with Angel. But Buffy ignores her, which is no good because two vampires come up behind Cordelia, covering her mouth and yanking her away into the shadows. Poor fucking Cordelia. Like, even without the enhancement of metaphor later, I love that Cordelia, who never displays tact and is bluntly honest with anyone, is the very person to call Buffy out. This whole scene, as sexy as it was and riveting, it is also really uncomfortable to watch. As I was saying, Buffy knew exactly what she was doing by targeting all three of these guys. She knows how Xander feels about her, knows how Willow feels about Xander, and does this to drive Angel crazy. She does this with no regards for them and ultimately because she can. The first time I heard her whisper that shit into Xander's ear, I was just like, oh shit. She did not just like, this is where I got my phrase intense from, because that's the kickoff of this season's intensity.
Yeah, for sure.
But I like that you had already pointed out the fact that Cordelia was the one, Buffy's metaphorical shadow, the one that has to come out and say this stuff, because everybody else is apparently just scared or kind of confused by what's going on, and Cordelia is seeing it for exactly what it is. But
And I like that it was her that confronted it, because she is usually the one that is in this position and playing this kind of character. So it's almost like you don't initially get Cordy's angle when she starts confronting her. At least I didn't, because I was like, is she upset because like Buffy's out bitching her? You know what I mean? Or I'm like, or is she like genuinely about to give her advice? Like she's concerned. So I'm glad that they took it there, because again, it's almost like this weird swap in their character where like normally you would see Buffy having the narrative that Cordy had in that moment, and it was switched. So it was like super interesting. And you as savage and seductive and sexy and all of that as Buffy delivered the way that she was like, I'm about to make my mark on this moment. It was also kind of like, I don't know about this. You need to calm down. But I do love her response when she's like, as defending champion. And I'm like, ooh, shit, that was the perfect thing to say.
Lich. Well, we flash forward to us immediately seeing Cordelia being hauled into the factory by the vampires. She's very worried, but she realizes that she's not alone. She's been tossed down to the ground with an unconscious Jenny Calendar. Jenny's down there. She's like, Miss Calendar? She's like, well, at least I'm not here by myself. I would actually feel a lot safer. I'd be like really concerned because I'm like, wait, why do they have somebody else that I know in here? But also, like, I'd be slapping that bitch, waking her up so we can start plotting like how the fuck we got to get out of here. I'd so much rather be down there with a friend than with nobody. Or at
Totally
least like
agree.
somebody, especially somebody in an authoritative role, because Cordelia is only like 16 years old and Miss Calendar's, 29. So when we also get that quick scene of Buffy deviating from her course home to visit the Master's grave, taking notice to the fact that he's been dug up. Lots of owls hooting in the episode. But she's not happy with either. She freaks out and leaves the cemetery. And here's a good time to point out a review that I read online of Buffy's whole vibe. This person named 𝒕𝒐𝐿's points out that they completely understand why Buffy is breaking down in this episode. She died. That's bound to make anyone question a lot of things. The difference is that Buffy can't escape. She can't take a year or two away from slaying in order to refocus her life and get into a positive mental state again. She's the only Slayer in the world. If she needed time away to fix her head, who would fight back in the forces of darkness if she was doing as such, So
Yeah.
you see the predicament that Buffy is in during this episode. Buffy is stuck. This moment after she realizes the Master Bones have been extracted helps to raise this point. Now she's not only dealing with the trauma post-Prophecy Girl, now she is having to also deal with this reality and keep on putting herself back in this role as a Slayer and risking her life potentially all over again. I was looking into the metaphor and the stuff for later in the episode that we'll talk about, but I found that quote about it and I was just like, that helped me see it in a different perspective, because I already kind of knew these things, but I hadn't given it form of like word yet. And I thought that 𝒕𝒐𝐿's reviews wrote that out really good and pointed out a big fact that Buffy can't just like go about life or go to therapy like any other person and really deal with this. She's got to get right back out there and start fighting the next fight. Like there's no break for her, and she's already had this awful ordeal where she's died once before. And I mean, yeah, some of that fear is out of the way and it's made her a little bit stronger as we've seen, the end of Prophecy Girls, but here it's PTSD. So, but we'll talk about it. The next day at school, Willow and Xander are talking with Giles about Buffy's behavior. Willow offering she's seeming possessed.
That's what it was. I mean, why else would she be acting like such a bitch?
And Giles is all like,
Willow, I think we're a little too old to be spelling things out.
And then Xander coming hot with the fucking confusion.
A bitka?
Xander is so dumb here talking about some bitka. Like, what? And then Giles like brushes it off. He's like, okay. Anyway, they go on to ask about her, but Buffy appears behind them and nearly walking in on their convo. Xander tries to cover it up. She informs them, guess what? The Master's fucking dug up. She popped over there last night and they have a vacancy. Willow wonders what they would want with the Master's bones. Buffy stating that they're going to try to bring them back, snapping at Giles to say that he told her that the Master was history. Giles saying he's never heard of a revivification ritual being successful. Her mad saying, but he has heard of them and he didn't tell her. Willow tries to defend Giles, but Buffy basically tells her to shut the fuck up, that this is Slayer stuff. Xander starts to call her out, but Snyder interrupts them. And this would have been a moment for sure where Xander would have been like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why are you acting like a bitka? What is happening? But of course, Snyder comes in and ruins that, to remind them that they're at school and have class to be at, because we heard the bell ring a good 4 minutes ago, because the bell's always ringing at Sunnydale High. Gotta get the kids to class, gotta get them out of here. Pointing out, and some of them have jobs. Looking to Giles, the trio leave, and Snyder points out to Giles that he has a sixth sense and he smells trouble, expulsion, and just the faintest aroma of jail all over our lovely Miss Summers. Giles taking up for her, though, saying that he should give her a chance instead of being a hater. I like the comment too. Giles talking about that would actually be one of the 5 senses, calling out Snyder and being a dick. I was like, oh fuck. Later that evening in the library, Giles speaks to the gang, having found the info on the ritual they need to know about and how they need the bones, which they have, and the blood of something that he doesn't understand, of the closest person, someone connected to the vampire, perhaps. 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒚. Buffy saying that would be her. Giles 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 maybe. Xander starts to ask a question when a rock is thrown through the window and Buffy catches it. A note bound to the rock by a necklace that Buffy claims is Cordelia's. Reading the note out loud, come to the bronze before it opens or we make her a meal. I love one that Buffy just catches this rock out of nowhere. Like that shit flies through the window. She just puts her hands up and smack grabs it. I'm going to call that a literal slay. But also fucking Xander coming up talking about they're going to cook her dinner. I'm like, oh my gosh, shut up, boy. Like, how are you? Like, it's supposed to be in here for funny stuff, but they're making you seem literally like a little slow for me right now. He just doesn't get it. Willow asks what they're going to do, but Buffy tells them she's not looking out for them anymore. She's going alone, and they're staying behind. Willow calling out the rest of the note, you know, the part that states that this is a trap. Giles agreeing. Buffy saying, she's got this. Y'all stay here, bye. Willow taking this opportunity to ask what the fuck is wrong with her. Xander saying Cordelia might be dead. Buffy saying it's her problem to deal with, leaving the library to head to the bronze. She literally has no time to stand and talk to them. She's just like, I'm out of here. When arriving outside of the bronze, Angel trails up behind her, and I'm like, oh god, here we go with him pissing her off again already. She better beat his ass. And she has to, of course, be rude, calling him essentially a stalker. He just says that he's there to watch her back, and her rudely saying back to him, don't you mean my neck? He's getting fed up with her, like, immediately, because he's like, why are you riding me? I was like, that's hot. She says that she doesn't trust him because he's a vampire. He says that she can trust him, and she needs someone's help because she's being naive and isn't as strong as she thinks. Her happy with this, asks if he thinks that he can take her, offering a duel.
Oh, come on. I mean, you must have thought about it. What would happen if it ever came down to a fight? You vampire, me the slayer? I mean, you must have wondered. Well, why don't we find out?
I'm not gonna fight you.
Come on. Kick my ass.
And I'm like, oh shit, oh my god, I'm getting hot. Like, what's happening? And he's like, we don't have time for this. And she's like, you know what, we really don't. Getting her back on track, she walks into the bronze, telling him to stay out of her way. So at least she invited him along, essentially. She was like, all right, I don't care if you're here anymore. She goes in to find a vampire fake crying, posing as Cordelia, but she's not dumb and knows it's not her, asking where is Cordelia to the vampire, but the vamp ain't telling her nothing. Angel coming in behind her to state, there's the bait, where's the hook? The vamp tries to attack, but Buffy flips her quick and pins her to the floor with a foot, realizing that Angel is correct, wondering why would they send just one vampire. Well, we're about to find out, because in the library, they're still discussing the trap that Buffy's walking into, while Giles ahas at the book he's been reading, having further translating the Latin Sumerian text to say that he's now clarified the closest to the master actually means the nearest, physically, the person or persons who were closest with him when he died. Fuck. Well, that's shitty for you guys, because now he looks up from his book to see a gang of vampires standing behind Willow and Xander, concluding that this is in fact a trap. It just isn't for Buffy. Dun dun dun. Haven't done one of those in a while. We see Buffy strapping the vamp's hands behind her back and telling Angel to watch this bitch, leaving to head to the library, arriving there to find it wrecked after a struggle, Xander waking up behind a table covered in blood. She tries to help him up, but he is fed up with her shit too and jerks his arm away from her grasp. He clues her in on the vampire she could handle herself, attacking them, taking Giles and Willow. And he doesn't know what her issues are or problem is, but he officially doesn't give a fuck. Because if she would have stayed behind and worked with them for 5 seconds instead of running off, she could have stopped it. She beats herself up a little, but then she says, we just have to think, where would they take them? Xander snapping at her, if they hurt Willow, I'll kill you. And I was like, she looks at him exactly the way I would, but I was like, asking, why did they take them and not him? He informs her of the clarity that Giles had given about the ritual, saying that they needed Giles, Willow, Cordelia, and of course Miss Calendar, and guessing that they probably have a complete set, most likely obtained by now. What do you think about Xander's comment to Buffy over Willow?
I feel like Xander never learns a lesson, so there's that. But most importantly, I'm like, this bitch out here killing all these vampires, and you're just a basic ass human being, and you're gonna you have the almighty audacity to even threaten her. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with him?
He's crazy. I always see this as like a heat of the moment thing, because we say things intensely when we're pissed off, and he's obviously, has a right to be angry with Buffy, especially with the fact that Willow and Giles have been taken and they were attacked, and for all he knows, they are probably dead by now too. So he's just really reacting on like an impulse. I get the aggression that's coming out right now. He's trying to make a statement. And it's a stupid statement, because I'm like, this bitch would literally whoop your ass in 2 seconds, as we know already. But
1,000%.
he's already been on Buffy's hate trail, and he, like everyone, is getting really seriously fed up. So this is just really an empty threat that he gives her, and it serves more for the realization of severity over her actions and how he's feeling about all that's happening. So if anything, it's like there to shake Buffy up. So I like give it that for that. But I was like, I've heard some other stuff, which I can't remember right now. I wish I could regurgitate stuff, but I've heard of other podcasts really dissect this moment, and they like go into this whole thing like ragging on Xander for it, and like being like, why he say this to her, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, because he's pissed off. Like, have you not yelled at your husband fuck you before or anything like that when you're pissed off, or went on a whole thing and then have to come back to your partner the next day and be like, so I'm sorry about all that shit I said. Like
Me every day.
like all the Aries be like
Literally.
but I don't know, I see why it's there,
I
kind of the
see
stupidest part.
why. I like see your side of it, but I also see why people question it, and maybe it's just out of the element of why would he do something and say something so extreme, even out of like an aggressive impulse, because it's Willow, who he himself treats like shit most times. So it's kind of like one of these things. Is this your moment where you're like realizing, oh shit, I really would be so devastated if something happened to Willow, and I'm just realizing that, and now this aggression is coming out because of that? Because for the audience, there's probably a good 50-50 split where some of us are seeing it from like, oh shit, he really does care. And then the other parts are like, why would he say that? He's been unnecessarily dismissive toward Willow, and now all of a sudden, because her whole entire life is at risk, we're finally showing up to care.
Yeah. Of course he doesn't want anything bad happening to her. I mean, it'd be the same thing if something were dramatically happening to you, I found out about it. I would be like, oh, the fuck.
If somebody full on has my physical safety threatened, you better respond the same way and say, I'll kill you.
Oh my god, I probably should have. I'm so stupid. That's a missed opportunity for us in the podcast, for me to have been like, and Xander
And then
looks
he
at
said,
Buffy and be like,
"I'll kill
if Willow gets hurt, I'll kill you. I'm gonna just clip out everything we said and put that in there. That would have been a fun throwback to 2011. Well, at least we still arrived here. You brought it out.
I did.
Well, either way, her and Xander head back to the Bronze to question the vampire that Angel's guarded, but of course she doesn't want to talk, not till Buffy slow tortures her by putting that cross necklace in her mouth, which does the trick after some time, safely assuming we got an off-screen slay after this moment too. I think in this moment she's working a little bit on her issues, because this is torturing another person, and it's something that she can actually take her aggression out on. So I think this is starting to fizzle away from her a little bit now. We also have never seen her pull this antic before either.
No.
She's not just staking the vampire and getting rid of them. She's like, well, you want me to make you talk? I'll make you talk then. So, and then, like I said, off-screen slay, because we didn't have the 2K.
No 2K that day.
We had that bronze empty though. I don't know. I guess the bronze wasn't open yet. Anyways, after the scene, we arrive at the factory where Colin is bringing a blade in a box to Absalom, who directs the vampires to begin the ritual. We see our 4 prisoners hanging upside down from the ceiling, being cranked out by a chain mechanism, moving them to dangle over top the master's bones, laying on a long table underneath them, so they can slice their necks and have their blood drip down onto the bones, if that's not clear enough, which is basically what Absalom calls out, setting up the ritual's negative vibes to start flowing. We see Buffy and Angel and Xander sneaking into the factory behind them, Angel calling out her name, Xander stating they gotta do something, Buffy instructing them to work on getting the gang out of there, Angel saying that she needs to distract the vampires. Right, she states. Xander asks what she will do. Buffy turns her head to him, raises her eyebrows to state,
I'm gonna kill them all. That ought to distract them.
Absalom, wielding the blade, calls out for the old one, for his pain, for the dark. For the dark, all the vampires start to say, because they're all going around in rotation going, for the dark, for the dark. Looking on to the vampires around the table, who I said repeat the phrase one by one, but when the last one goes to mutter, he barely gets the words out when he disappears before them dusting, and we get the 2K per slay for the second time in the episode. Buffy appearing in the faded mist, fist up, and I fucking love this moment. She just fucking stakes this vampire, and he dissipates to ash, and she's standing there like in the group. She's like, hey, what's up, you guys? I'm gonna take his place now. Well, power stands. This bitch is fucking on it. I love her. They all just look over at her, realizing, and then they growl and begin to attack her, and she has no trouble at all combating them. She takes on 3 at once. Absalom backs away slightly, ushering Colin to flee the scene, which he does by sneaking out of a back door. Absalom moving over to the 4, hanging to complete the deed, but they start to be cranked away by Angel and Xander with the chain pulley. Absalom screaming out, and I gotta imitate it because this motherfucker was pissing me off with this, because he's screaming everything this episode, essentially, when he gets angry, especially at Buffy in a minute. But he's like,
You are right.
the sacrifices! Stop them! I'm like, boy, you need to shut the fuck up.
Loved it.
One of the vamps leaving Buffy to go up there and attempt that. Buffy seen still battling 2 vamps back to back. Love when she does this flip and smacks the wood crate onto that one vampire's head and kicks him back, like busting that thing on his head. I was like, oh my god, she's just like whipping in and out of these fucking moves. This is ramped up. This is a different fighting style than we've seen in the previous season, where it's slower. She's just like, next. It's awesome. In this motion, they have all gotten the Scoobies down at this point from their hanging position upstairs. When the vampire attacks, Angel puts on his game face, taking on the attacker. Downstairs, Buffy stakes the vampire girl that she's been battling. As Jenny crawls over to Giles upstairs, he starts to ask, where's Buffy? Xander seen sitting cradling a passed out Willow, pointing down to Buffy, saying she's working on her issues. And I love that. They just give her the moment to do it. They understand what's happening in this moment, too. Wailing on people has got to be second up to torturing a bitch with a cross, I guess. Speaking of Buffy wailing on the vampires, she continues to wail on the vampire as Angel stakes and kills the one that he's been facing. She has the upper hand when Absalom screams out behind her, wielding a sledgehammer. Enough!
Your day is done, girl. I'll grind you into a sticky paste and hear you beg before I smash in your face.
She banters like a badass to him.
So, are you gonna kill me, or are we just making small talk?
He yells in anger, running at her, the other vampire charging from the other side. She looks to the side of her at one of the wooden posts that has a torch burning there. She breaks it off and spins it horizontal to stake the one vampire to her left, giving us that 2K per slay I just said. And then the flame side setting fire to Absalom and him going up in flames as we get a special fiery, no doubt 4K per slay. The sledgehammer dropping to the floor as he disappears to dust. Season 2 got in a budget, like I said. Buffy drops the rod as we see Willow say from above to Xander, it's over. And he tells her, no, it's not. They all watch on as Buffy eyes the Master's bones, kneels down and grabs the sledgehammer, moving over to him, taking breaths. She stares at his head, summons every ounce of her anger still residing in her for him killing her, and slams the hammer down onto his skull. Then swings again to his ribcage, then his pelvis, continuing to pulverize him with several more swings, starting to cry in this process. Well, everyone's still watching her as Angel slowly starts to move in behind her as she crushes the last pieces of him, stepping away, bawling her eyes out. He tells her it's okay, and she turns to him, falling into his arms, crying into his chest, him hugging on to her, and she's letting it all out, letting it all go. I had to say that with like some like not crying vibes, because I almost like teared up literally reading that. But like I've seen this episode so many times, and I always break down in this moment. I mean, I'm not flooding tears and like freaking out, like, you know, snot dripping everywhere or anything like that. That'll come in the future. But this moment right here is just so powerful. Like, and Sarah does it so fucking well. All that emotion, we felt it build up. We felt her be mean to everybody this episode, and we feel her like physically releasing this energy right here. And it's fucking beautiful enough to make me cry every time. I care about her so much. So I care about her knowing everything that happens in the show. And it's obviously my favorite show for a reason. But this is like one of the first points where I'm just like, I feel for you in a different way than I ever have before. And it's because I think I respect her in this moment, because she works on her stuff. She just doesn't continue to decompartmentalize this stuff and just move along with it. The fact that they created this scene and gave her this chance to physically show us her releasing something by smashing his bones to dust is fucking glorious. What did you think of her busting his damn bones up?
I loved it. I loved, like you said, that they opened that space for that moment to happen. And it just, I think, like you said, you care about her differently because it humanizes her. Like I said earlier, you know, we have this great depiction of her as the slayer, which sets her apart from a regular person and a regular girl. So we have that understanding of her that she's almost expected to arrive in every instance ready to slay, with courage intact, with confidence intact. And this kind of shows the side of her that's really dealing with the human emotions of going through the things that are attached to being a slayer. So it was really great. And yeah, it just creates a point of care from the audience that if it wasn't already there, you definitely have it in place now going forward because of the fact that you just have that connection with her where it feels relatable. That's how probably most of us want to deal with our trauma. If we had a physical, tangible outlet to release some of the suppressed emotions we carry around, how powerful would that moment look for all of us? So I feel like it's such a well depicted part of the episode and probably of the show in general. It was a great build up. She was a bitch the whole time to the point in which we're almost like, all right, we're over it now. You
Yeah.
know? So it was great to get over it with that exact moment of her shattering those bones because that just really finalizes the whole master thing, now
Yeah.
unless they're going to come back with super glue and a magnifying glass and pick up every particle of dust like
No.
this vamp master, there's no return, there's no coming back. It really seals the deal in a really, really visual way, so I really appreciated it, and now it gives this element of, well, now what,
Yeah.
you know so
No,
I
it
liked it for that too.
it wrapped up that story really good. Like, obviously, going into the next season, we have to close up what happened in the last season. And they did a really good job with writing this episode, I think, for that context. The fact that Master's bones stayed behind, obviously setting it up for this episode to be a
Mhm.
thing because he's aged so old, has that ability to, like, have that possibility of revivification.
Mhm.
And the fact that they came up with this whole thing of, like, you use the people that were with him to offer their blood to bring him back in it. I'll
Yeah, and
mention
I
it when
guess,
we get
like, you
there.
don't even really think about that, you know what I mean? Because there is such they're already dead, so there's this almost eternal vibe attached to a vampire, so when that does happen and it's not a complete slay, his bones are still there, the whole dust thing didn't happen, so it begs the question, like, how how can you die twice? You know,
So,
you've already done become a vampire and now you've died again and now all these people are so like mercilessly after like wanting your tangible existence back that they are willing to get sacrifices, get your bones. Like
mhm.
that's intense. That's crazy.
This shit's cool.
All
Next
right, when
day.
I die, I need you to do that for me.
Well, your bones will be left behind, so whoever was in the room with you whenever you died, I guess it's gonna be a problem for them.
You're
Except
like, I hope it's not me. I'll have to kill
there
stuff.
ain't gonna be a Slayer and a whole ass Scooby gang to come protect them. We're gonna go full ghost face on their asses.
True.
Well, we arrive at the end of our episode, and the next day we get a brief interaction outside of the school with Cordelia and Miss Calendar walking together, speaking on the events of trauma-inducing events the night before. Cordelia worrying about the stains in her clothes. She's going to have to dry clean. Jenny smarting off that is the worst part about nearly having your throats cut after all. The dry cleaning. The stains, as she says. We see Buffy and Giles across the field walking together, and she's commenting on how she's been acting like a total bitch to everyone, and she doesn't know how she's going to face her friends now. He persuades her from punishing herself. She goes on to rehash that she put her best friends in mortal danger, that she was a moron, and he admits that she acted wrongly, but tells her that he's certain it's not the worst mistake that she will ever make in life, trying to help out. She gives him points for effort, and then she heads off to class when, of course, the bell rings. Coming into said class, she sees Willow and Xander in there. She slowly moves in with hesitation, not knowing what they'll say to her, but having to face them. Willow kindly calls out to say hey to her, eyeing the empty seat next to her, saying that they saved her a seat. Buffy takes it. Xander starts making small talk and comments on how the teacher that they've got for this class is rumored to be hella boring. Willow cheerfully adding that she hears he nods off a lot, so that'll be a plus. And she's so perky here. You can tell they're trying to like crush the moment with Buffy, and they're like, hey, feel good. That's fine. Like, we're good. And Xander asked them, so are we bronzing it tonight? Trying to bring once again that normal element back to it. Willow saying, Wednesday is kind of beat. Xander saying,
Well, we could grind our enemies into talcum powder with a sledgehammer, but gosh, we did that last night.
looking over to Buffy, they both smile at her, and she finally cracks a smile at them. The first smile we've really seen her fucking do all episode. And I'm like, yay, like, everything's going to be normal again. They go on to chat as we cue some corny ass montage vibe music of them just being happy together, laughing as we fade away from them. I like this because these are great friends right here. Buffy already has admitted that she realizes she acted wrongly and is upset over what she's done and caused. But the fact, without her even having to apologize, which of course she still totally should do, they just clear her from having to do any of that. Because it'd be like if you made me mad, like it would take me nothing to get back over that because I care about you initially. I probably wouldn't make something a big deal, even though me and you always talk about stuff. Like if you did something that made me mad in the moment and stuff like that, I'm not going to carry on that tension or anything like that. I'm going to squash it and let you know that I'm there for you. And like that's exactly what they're doing.
It's
Because
very
they,
unconditional.
yeah, because they also understand after watching her beat the Master's Bones that she was in distress and that they know exactly why
Totally.
she's been acting out the whole episode. So it comes full circle to them that like, oh, we've witnessed your trauma up close, and this is key to like you being seen here, Buffy. Like we understand this, and it shows that Buffy is not alone at all, even still in this moment. But I like that the scene ends there. We cut back to the empty factory with a shot on the Master's bones. Broke all the fuck up on the floor. His half skull is sitting there, and I was like, oh, the teeth look cool. We see Colin's feet walk back up to it. He takes a look around, realizing that she's slayed all of his new crew that he worked so hard to build, and he takes notice to those smashed bones of the Master surrounding him. He paces in place and says out loud to himself, I hate that girl. We fade to black, and here endeth the episode. I'm like, we're not done with the Anointed just yet. All I gotta say is he better get back on Threads and post for the algorithm to connect him with more vampires. Because
You
that's what
better
he had to do.
connect with Malcolm.
He had to do that the last time. All right, a little bit of fun facts that we have for this episode. Buffy's new haircut is due to her role that she had in Scream 2, because the hiatus of season 1 to 2, she took on that role as CC Cooper in Scream 2. And they cut her hair short and lightened it blonder. Xander has a fresh cut that's shorter in this episode because I didn't comment on it earlier, but it's a shorter cut than we saw him with last season. Willow's hair is also a little bit redder this season than it was last time, because last season it was more like a brown red, and now it's actually a little bit more of a true red. And she also got a haircut too. And Cordelia has highlights, and Jenny also has a new cut and sporting some Lydia Dietz looking kind of choppy bangs. That I love a PC bang. So I had to call out everybody's new styles for this season because we were coming back hot, so everybody had to have new hair, except Giles apparently, because he's still just wearing tweed and looking the same because he's a librarian. This episode had 2.9 million households tuned in for the premiere of this episode on the night it aired, which is a fucking shit ton of people. The episode title comes from the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow poem. There was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead, and when she was good, she was very good, but when she was bad, she was horrid. So that's where they got the title from, when she was bad. That's the few little things. I'm having a harder time this season than last season. I found a bunch of shit, but so far the first few episodes that I've done the scripts for, I haven't found that many juicy like fun facts about the episodes. I guess we will just have more episodic stuff to talk about when we get to those. But either way, getting into the metaphor, obviously PTSD, as we talked about, post-traumatic stress disorder, for anybody that doesn't know what PTSD stands for. Buffy clearly has this because she physically was killed by the Master. She died and was brought back to life. While probably glad for this, that doesn't mean it hasn't stirred up issues and stress for her to deal with afterward. Obviously, throughout the episode, Buffy is displaying these issues in the form of isolation, lashing out, and serving major bitch. Her isolation makes sense as her friends haven't undergone the same trauma. Speaking on the review that I did with Shangel earlier, she literally puts her life on the line every night to battle the undead, so this stress is already a brewing factor for a Slayer, and in the line of her duty, the worst has happened to her. Her friends do not face these same dangers at all, therefore having an ability to grasp emotionally what Buffy goes through on the regular. Not to mention, she can't speak about any of this with her parents for the obvious reasons. She's also isolated herself all summer from her dad and is now doing so now back with her mom. Considering Buffy's situation, though, and the metaphor relating to the plot, she made the commitment in Prophecy Girl to face her fear of adulthood and choose to grow up. Parents often reluctant for their kids to grow up. Children often associate growing up with losing their parents to be on their own one day in adulthood, aka meaning you become distant from them and all that. Also, with her friends, she cannot relate to them at this point because she's metaphorically still viewing them as a childlike form. They're still in childhood, where she's taken steps to kind of walk into her role in adulthood, and they don't understand the space that she's moved into existing beyond them. She even tells Willow in this episode to grow up at some point. When Giles attacks her in her dream sequence, we realize that he is the master disguising as Giles. This translates to the push that Giles has been giving her for the commitment to being the Slayer and her duty of Slayerhood, aka adulthood. Buffy sees Giles as the one who killed her childhood, so that's why she has this dream. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't really think of that. You know what I mean? I thought he was just dreaming with the traumas of the master. But it's
Dang.
because she sees Giles in this position of being like her guide, the one who basically said and read out in Prophecy Girl, the master is going to kill Buffy, and then it came to pass. So she blames him in that occurrence of that actually happening. Willow and Xander in her dream also ignore the attack, helping to further the thought of them not understanding her situation even more. Then we wrap up her shadow self, Cordelia, being the one to quite literally call her out in the episode, being the one to comment to Buffy on the trauma of the demons, the master, the battle, and how she doesn't even like to think about it. This could be seen as Buffy talking to herself and reliving the horrible experience, which the shadow has no room for that effect on Buffy's conscious mind, and exposes her to it and tells her to knock it off and get over it later outside the bronze. Concluding that Buffy is rather upset about the Master's bones, this reason being that it leaves open the possibility of him being resurrected, aka the possibility of her fears of adulthood they're just like buried like his bones were, and they're not destroyed like she thought, making the moment more powerful when she smashes the bones in the end. Only in this act of catharsis she can now be certain her fears are gone forever, and she can get back on track to her journey to adulthood and metaphor. I thought that was like, ooh, that was the best metaphor I think I've had for the show so far, other than like the stuff about adulthood. I know it's like kind of corny that like our whole metaphor for the show, pretty much the entirety, is about growing up, but it's cool how you can dissect this and see where they're writing all this stuff in and how it comes into play in the metaphor.
Totally. Yeah.
Sarah Michelle Gellar and her ability and twist in playing Buffy in a way we have not seen her. I didn't really mention it too much, but I am now. Her displays of rude, unfiltered anguish, especially towards her friends, is very impactful to us as the viewer, as we get to grow with her and witness her attempting to bottle up her emotions and keep her trauma buried versus actively working with it. And all the moments that she gets to play the role of bad girl just completely switches it up for Buffy this episode. We get a real look into how people experiencing PTSD expose those symptoms and often truly treat people when going through these motions. She should be feeling this way, as it is setting her up to do the work to heal past it. And it's nice that the episode hones in hardcore on the situation, because it is huge grounds for the reality of things. And I kind of said that in the beginning, that I'm happy the episode really went there for this. And Sarah Michelle Gellar, of course, reigns supreme for me from beginning to end. And I can't help but feel the impact of the situation reach its head when she smashes the Master's bones to literal dust and releases out everything she felt. It's really a fact. We feel for Buffy. So that being said, we also get the chance to hate Buffy in this episode, because we often get mad at her for being this way to her friends, whom we know she loves and we haven't seen this side of her before. But if anything, we also see Buffy as more three-dimensional, like even though we're used to seeing some different sides of her, therefore we get the chance to find understanding in her and the actions that she's taking, ultimately bringing her to a place of resolve at the end, dealing with her trauma and resuming her normal lighthearted energy and care for her friends and her core group, to which we also take notice, fully bringing into our awareness that Buffy needs her friends, that they are key to what makes her Slayerhood different. Most Slayers in the past act alone and in isolation, and because Buffy shares these bonds and has them all as an invaluable resource in different ways, it enhances the power that she wields and often helps in her journey along thwarting most of the evil nasties she's encountered. We've literally seen that leading up to now. And she's a better Slayer because of her friends. So I'm glad that she didn't continue to push them away to where she was just like on her own, because then she gonna wind up invisible like Marcy. It's just not cute. But this is the perfect follow-up, in my opinion, to Prophecy Girl, because it finishes off as a sort of part 2 to that one and brings us into a place of closure fully for season 1 and amps up the stakes for season 2, being that the Anointed is still out there conjuring up forces to oppose the Slayer and continue the Order of Aurelius. We also still get to see the slow integration of Cordelia into our core group with this episode. She just keeps getting roped into these situations, like quite literally, as she's always getting tied up by somebody in all these episodes where she's put in the hot seat. But it's like, once you can't unsee what's happening, it's like she's definitely in relation to Cordy that we saw in The Harvest, doing whatever everyone else does, walking around talking about the strange occurrences and how everybody else just like brushes it off. And now she's seen all this stuff, so now she knows what's going on. She can't be like, oh, I think it was a gang, or like these crazy people attacked the Bronze. Now she like will come back and be like, Buffy, so what's up with all the vampires that attacked the Bronze? What's happening? Are you gonna kill them? Like, whatever. And then noting again that the fight sequences and CGI of dusting is also got like has a huge glow up this episode because we got
Mhm.
better fight sequences. The dusting is in no way like what we saw in Welcome to the Hellmouth, like that shitty
No.
ass stuff. I'm ready to see a vampire morph so we can see the CGI on that, and I'm sure we'll get that along the season somewhere. But Buffy's fighting faster and more confidently, and in a way that she's perfected her techniques. I love a good action scene, which is like why I'm going on and rambling about this, but this one just delivers. It brings us fully into a new space also where we know that things are different. The music really helps to set the tone also, and like as I mentioned, Christoph Beck being the new composer, he is a mastermind, and I'm already credited like my love for his workings and stuff, but you can already see like the intimate song that plays at the end when Buffy's crushing the bones and stuff. He just like hits the piano really good with it. Like, I don't know, it's just good stuff. But
I agree.
yeah, either way, the episode still has all that quippy humor that we usually get, even though the energy is shown different and we got a tonal shift going on. What are your final thoughts on When She Was Bad?
I love this episode. I liked all the layers in it, and I liked seeing the character swaps, like I keep talking about. Other than Willow and Xander, who pretty much stayed the same, which was weird because they started it off like that was the thing that shocked me the most. I think is they started it off in such a Willow Xander centric way that I thought that the episode in general would have more of them being like the risk or something, or like their safety is being risked, or they're the like bait or whatever. Like I thought it was going to be so much more about them, and it was hardly about them at all. Like they were in it a lot, but it like removed the theme almost immediately as it was applied. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was entertaining and interesting and sad, and I felt all the emotions almost like I did in Prophecy Girl, which is crazy to say because that was a finale and this is just like the start of the season. So that leaves me really excited to see like how my own emotions are gonna like be on a roller coaster, I'm sure, throughout this whole 22 episodes.
Yep. It's gonna get so good. It's gonna get so good.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
so excited. I'm so excited. I will say, like, with episode 3, we kick it off from there. It's gonna be a good fucking season, Courtney. I'm really excited.
I'm excited.
All right, great. Moving on to our final slays.
Final slays.
Yeah. Gay. All right, my quote that I have for this episode in reference to Giles consulting his books, Xander saying to Willow to pay up. He called 10 minutes before Giles said that he was going to consult his books. It was like 8 minutes and 30 seconds, like into the school day. He's undid it. I thought that was a cute little, like, more a moment versus a full on quote because it obviously is dialogue between him and Willow. But my quote across the whole episode obviously has to come from Buffy and Cordelia's interaction where she's like, "You're really campaigning for bitch of the year," and Buffy is like, "As defending champion, you nervous?"
That was such
like,
a good exchange.
that's it. What's your quote?
So I have two. The first one is when Buffy's dad was talking to Joyce, and he was like, "At least when she was burning stuff down, I knew what to say." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, first off, that would be the least likely time you know what to say as a parent, because whose kid is just out here burning stuff down? Like, how is that normal? Your kid is an arsonist? Like, no.
He knew how to yell.
I'm like, so basically what you're saying is you don't know how to deal with the like what we're gonna assume from your end is typical high school teenage trauma, not knowing, versus her burning down an entire gym, and that's when you arrive in full parent mode knowing what to do. I'm like, this seems backwards, but okay. Anyway, moving right along. My second quote was when Buffy was talking to Angel very sarcastically and was like, "Let me guess, some of your cousins are in town for a family barbecue and we're all on the menu."
I'm glad your quotes were different than mine because I thought for sure you were going to choose the Buffy and Cordelia one because me and you both laugh out loud whenever she made that comment. We both looked at each other and you were like, "Oh shit." And I'm like, "Yeah."
I did have it jotted down as a moment, but yeah, I really appreciated it more so the Angel and Buffy exchange just because we're used to her being a sarcastic asshole sometimes. But in this instance, it was just like chef's kiss. Like you couldn't have said anything better in this moment to be a bitch. So I was like, I love this.
Loves it, literally. All right, what gave you the weekly wiggins?
One of them for sure was random, but it's when Xander calls Giles G-Man.
Giles
Because
didn't
I
like it either.
just I just can't with that. I really, really can't. But overall, I think the beginning takes the cake for me, where the Willow Xander exchange is happening, and it's just like all the same vibes we're revisiting from before, where Willow's the second choice. It's super obvious, and she's almost like just surrendering to her position in that. And I hate to see that for her. So I'm just like, Willow, no,
Yeah.
weekly wigs.
Weekly Willow.
It's the Willow wigs.
The weekly Wigglow. I'm done. Mine, honestly, Buffy's attitude ended up being what made my list as my weekly wigs, because her lashing out on her friends and doing all this stuff, it's just not the Buffy we're used to seeing. Like, I'm always throwing her out there. Like, her mom is literally the queen of positive energy. And Buffy is out here being a fucking negative bitch as fuck. So I chose Buffy to be my weekly wigs. I never thought she would be on my list for this, like, at least for a while, like
No,
a long,
never.
long while. But here she is. So Buffy is that.
Yeah, agreed.
Which we're gonna go right into Shining Slayer. Mine, I'm gonna say, is Angel, because he persisted in making sure that Buffy was okay above anyone else this episode for the most part, even though they are all worried about her. He is the one that shelters her in the end. She turns to him and like cries in his chest and stuff like that. He's already making his cue to come up behind her in that moment too. So he just put some stuff out there. So I gave it to him because he set up a safe space for her to release and feel protected. And for that, I'm giving Angel Shining Slayer, because it's not just about Buffy saving the day and killing all these vampires in 2.5 seconds and all the things. Like, who else is going to get Shining Slayer? Nobody else, because everybody else was kidnapped and about to get the neck slit up.
You're right.
So
Yeah.
whatever. If anything, the Shining Slayer should technically be the sledgehammer. But, I should have just rolled with that first as a joke.
True though.
Who's your Shining Slayer for the app?
Mine is obviously Buffy, but not for the slaying and all of that, but more so because she conquered probably the hardest battle out of anyone in the episode, which is her trauma. And she was given the both fortunate and unfortunate avenue to deal with it, but at least be able to do it so tangibly and concretely that she knows that this is a point of trauma that she can move past now,
Yeah.
because of how she was able to let it go. So she was my Shining Slayer. I felt like she was dealing with all of the different emotions throughout the episode, as we could see, from like trying to distance herself emotionally, trying to piss everyone off. So there's a reason for a wedge between herself and the rest of the gang, to coming back full circle after she released her trauma. And now we're back in like our normal, more lighthearted, regular healthy mindset Buffy. So I was just more impressed with the journey that she took this episode. So she's my Shining Slayer.
I love it. Honestly, love that. That's going to be my honorable mention, Shining Slayer, because I didn't even think about like the work that Buffy did. I've talked about it obviously and expressed it across all. Especially my closing statement was literally just all about Buffy and the work she did, and I said it 8 times throughout the whole episode that I loved it. So that's my overall Slayer instead of just Shining. But whatever.
She's the slayer of the slays.
But I like it because I chose Angel and you chose Buffy, so together we're Bangel. Cue the Buffy and Angel love theme.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, Slayer at predictions. I'm going to switch it up because moving forward, every episode, I'm going to be giving you the following episode's title, and you can now guess what it's going to have to do with and figure out what may occur in the next one. So that way it'd be fun for everybody to be like, that bitch is dead ass wrong. And sometimes you can't guess from it, but it's
Probably
a fun little
9
concept.
times out of 10.
So that being said, the next episode is called Some Assembly Required. What do you think this episode's going to be about?
An assembly for sure, right? Or is it a play? Well, I don't know. If it's a play on words, then there's going to be an assembly in the school, and maybe that will wreak havoc on some things, or some vampires will show up, or yeah. Other than that, some assembly required. I don't know.
Think about that statement.
It rings assembly, like school assembly. Like, I feel like it's a play on words, but I guess we'll see if I'm wrong. If it's not a play on words, I don't know, that's kind of scares me a little bit because the only thing I think of is, are they gonna try to piece the master back together still, even though he's like dust? They're gonna assemble him back together.
Oh, I'm gonna have to remember this comment to bring it back full circle when we get there after you watch the episode. I can't wait for you to watch it. It's a good one. I like it.
I'm excited.
All right, great. Well, a little follow-up to Slayer predictions that I have is, do you think that everyone's going to be okay with Buffy and her relationships now after the episode's end?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I think, like you said, they knew the whole time that, she was going through something. If that wasn't visibly obvious to them before and they weren't already putting that into their method of questioning around her character, I think that it became obviously clear when she was just annihilating the master's bones to no avail. And that was just giving her all the peace and all the victory and all the things that she needed to feel. So, like you said, it was a very full circle moment. And I feel like now she's kind of surpassed that. Not to say we won't see some of that again in the future, I think, maybe. But I do think that hopefully she's now normal.
And Slayer.
Ish.
As normal as you can get being a vampire slayer, because, there's no
Yes.
normalcy there.
True.
All right, well, season 2 is going to be an intensely wild ride, and we got this one out of the way, so I hope you're ready, mate. Thanks, as always, to all who have come here to listen and share space with us. I am beyond excited for this next chapter and season for Revamped, and pleased to be continuing this journey with all of you and my best mate. Don't forget to write in and let us know how you feel about this one. What's your take on Buffy and her Joan Collins tude? Do you love the sexy dance that she gives to Xander? I would love to hear your perspectives along with your Shining Slayer and what gave you guys the weekly wigs. Stick around for the outro to find out how to get in contact with us and where you can find us on social media to keep up with us, our chosen one, and all things Revamped, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Until then, we will catch you guys next week for episode 2.
I try and tell them about the important things in life. Discipline, responsibility, punctuality. I might as well be talking to myself.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And don't forget, if you're looking for a friend and some unsolicited advice for the times when life feels out of orbit, go follow Life in Retrograde Podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.